Headbangers, iron slangers, what's going on? It's your boy Moonshine. How you doing? What's good with you? Hopefully you're having a good Sunday afternoon. I'm doing all right. I can't really complain. It's been uh it's been all right thus far. It is almost gym 30. About to go put in that work. Doing the most heinous and brutal of all days. It is leg day today. I had my schedule thrown off a little bit with it being Christmas this past week. So I'm going to go in, get my leg stuff, get that done, and then I'll be back on my normal schedule as far as working out this upcoming week. If at any point in time I make gross nasally noises, I apologize. I think I'm starting to come down with something a little bit. I'm not quite sure. Could just be allergies. It could be some sort of sinus thing, but I'm monitoring it right now. I feel fine other than being a little stuffy, but it's that time of year, so there's not much you can do. A couple people at my job, I think they were feeling it this past week. I saw a bottle of Theraflu sitting on the break room table, so I was like, "Oh boy, we got something going around here." But anyhow, yeah, man. Before I go do that, before I go hit the gym, I figured I would come on here and let's talk some wrestling. You ready to talk some wrestling? I'm ready to talk some wrestling. So I was listening to tunes and doing that sort of thing, and I said, let me go check out some matches. I checked out the latest episode of JCW on Thursday night. I didn't watch it live. I wasn't sitting there as it was playing. I forget what I was doing. I was doing something, but it involved not watching JCW at the time. It was Christmas. So, I mean, who the hell knows what, I don't really remember what I was doing besides a whole lot of nothing. But I figured people seem fairly engaged, at least, on based on my numbers and what there was a little bit more engagement with people checking out the video and hearing my opinions on stuff. So I figured I would do this another scouting report, analysis, breakdown, whatever the hell you want to call it. And then on top of that, I actually watched a couple of WWE matches that I thought were pretty interesting. Uh, one was a one was a title match from, I want to say, this past week's SmackDown or maybe last week's. I'm not quite sure. It might have been Friday nights, which was probably a pre-tapes, maybe, maybe not. And then I watched an NXT match, which had a little bit of controversy surrounding it. So I figured, yeah, man, let's get into this. I'll try not to keep you all too long. If I can, I'll try and throw some music on in the background, post production edit. And if it's not too long and I can throw a few songs on here just to have something going in the background, just make it fun, make it cool. So yeah, the first thing I watched, we'll start with the WWE stuff. We'll start with SmackDown. So there was a match. It was two of the newer talent, guy by the name of Carmelo Hayes wrestled Ilya Dragunov. And Ilya's a guy who they both came from the NXT brand, both developmental guys. Ilya was in the NXT UK branch of NXT for the longest time. Then when that folded, they brought him over stateside. He started working in NXT. Has, depending on who you ask, he's had some very good matches with Gunther Walter, a guy who's very high up. He's the guy that wrestled John Cena in his last match and tapped him out, and that was a whole big controversy. But he's how would I describe him? He's about, I want to say, like 5'10", looks like he weighs probably about 190, 190, 95-ish. He might have a couple more pounds, give or take, margin of error, probably a 10-pound margin of error there either way. Very hard hitting style. Lots of stiff strikes, lots of MMA based and ground based wrestling, suplexes, stuff like that. Very hard hitting, very snug and believable. That's pretty commonplace with the European style. It's not to get too deep into the weeds, but there's different styles with different you get different regions of not just the United States, but then you branch out globally, and every part of the globe has a different style. Primarily, most pro wrestlers and most pro wrestling schools, when you start learning how to work and you start learning how to do it properly, we mostly focus on the American style because we're US based. So you work from the left side. That's one of the main things that you do. Versus they do that in Japan as well, but what we call the Mexican style, they work on the right side. So it takes a little bit of getting used to if you work with any Mexican wrestlers. Plus, sometimes there's a language barrier. Uh, the Mexican style is, if you're familiar with lucha libre, a lot more acrobatic, a lot more flair and pageantry going along with the whole presentation. It's that's a lot of it. It's very much it's ingrained in the culture there. Japan is a lot more hard hitting, a lot more shoot based. Shoot being more realistic style, an offshoot of the word shoot fight. Lots of submission based and ground based stuff, hard strikes, lots of high impact power moves, a lot of what is generally considered a lot of head drop moves, a lot of people getting dropped on their heads, especially in the 90s, which is a lot of people that I know when they broke in, that was stuff that they emulated. Hence why some of us have bionic necks now, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, man. And then the European style is a little bit, that's a lot more mat based, a lot more with joint manipulation, stuff like that. And overall, when people travel, they start blending the styles and create these hybrid styles, and that's nowadays I think the modern American style. It's more, and then in America you got different regions of the country have they kind of take from here and there. You got in the South, it's a little bit more of like a traditional kind of style. The Northeast, it's a little bit more of like this hybrid style that's popular nowadays with the fusion of Mexican lucha libre and Japanese puroresu and European catch style, and that's pretty much a lot of probably like the Northeast and California, places like that. They're some of the main places, and then throughout the little bits and pieces of the Midwest and stuff like that. But anyhow, I didn't you didn't come here to hear the whole history and the whole analysis of the different flavors of pro wrestling that there are. But I just kind of give you a general idea. But Ilya, he does more like what is considered the strong style, which is the Japanese style mixed with a lot of the European catch style. Carmelo, he's I would say not to be I'm not trying to be derisive here, but he's a basic indie wrestler. Kind of mixes a lot of acrobatic lucha libre and Japanese style acrobatics and high flying stuff with probably a little bit of the strikes that are more commonplace nowadays. So they had a match. It was for, I want to say, the Intercontinental title, which is one of the longest running titles in the WWE's history. It's been around forever. I believe Pat Patterson was the first Intercontinental champion. You had guys like Pedro Morales, Randy Savage, Tito Santana, Chico Santana. He hit him with the flying burrito gorilla. But and all sorts, just a ton of guys. Most recently, one of their main guys, Sami Zayn, was the champ. Ilya got the belt from him. Ilya's been on the shelf for a while. I think he was on the shelf for a year with a knee injury. He gets hurt a lot. It happens because of the style that he implements. But he's back. He won the title. He's been defending it. So they have a match, and it was about 13, 14 minutes long. And overall, I would say I'll get into the details a little bit, but overall, I would say this was a match where two guys basically beat the hell out of each other for a very silent crowd. There were spots where the crowd seemed to be more on Carmelo Hayes' side, where when he would get some offense in, they would start to, they would start making some noise. You could hear a little bit, but then again, sometimes you can never tell because WWE pipes in crowd noise, so you never tell what's the genuine article or not. But the first half of it was was spots and stiff strikes. That's basically all it was. They just started hitting each other in the head with forearms, stiff strikes, stiff chops, lots of head kicks, lots of big boots to the head and super kicks and enziguri, Owen Hart kicks, a lot of stuff like that. Uh, the crowd was pretty dead for Ilya. That's the one thing I will say. I noticed that pretty early and often is that they didn't really seem to respond to him. And I think some of that is based on the fact that a match like this had zero psychology. What I mean by that is that you could not tell who to root for and who to not root for. Nowadays, I know, and this is a drawback to the work rate style of pro wrestling where it's more about the in-ring match where, like I said previously, if you can't get it done in the ring, then everything that you do in the back is for naught. All the pomp and circumstance and pageantry and everything, all that all that doesn't matter. All the storytelling from the back doesn't matter if you can't tell a story in the ring. Uh, Guys who know what I'm talking about. But there was nothing there. I don't really, since I don't follow the product on the regular, I couldn't really tell you what the buildup was to it, but there was no discernible, okay, this guy's the asshole. This guy's the guy that we need to root for. Either the basic premise of pro wrestling is you want to see one guy get his ass kicked and the other guy do the ass kicking. That is typically the basic formula of pro wrestling. It's the bare bones right to its core. That is always what is meant to be. It's meant to elicit a reaction, passionate response from people, and the passionate responses should be you're either rooting for one or jeering. You're cheering for one, jeering for the other. And in this one, you couldn't really tell. And obviously, the crowd was more behind Carmelo than Ilya, but I couldn't tell who the heel of the face was. It didn't seem to make. It was just a couple of guys beating the shit at each other for a title. Uh, so then going into the second half of the, uh, actually I missed something. In the first half of the match, Carmelo Mello he hit a very beautiful DDT. It was a springboard no look DDT that it was impressive. A very good timing, very good skill, very high level advanced move to do. Looked pretty. Then they went into the second half of the match, which basically started turning into it was where they started getting cooking into the finish. Lots of a series of high impact stuff, a near fall. They went up top. Uh, Ilya set up a superplex. He goes for the superplex. Mello twists in midair, hits a cutter, boom. Ilya smacks his face on the mat. He comes up all bloody, which happens. He rolls to the outside. He's setting up. He's obviously setting something up, which is another thing I don't really. It's just like it's so obvious that they're setting something up, but they're out on the outskirts of the ring apron and they're fighting and brawling and feuding and everything. And the one thing I will say is I know falls into the suspension of disbelief, but it tends to bury the ref when they do this because they're out there you're supposed to have a 10 count being on the outside of the ring. That's the rules of pro wrestling. And they're out there for a good 30, 40 seconds. And it's obvious because they're setting up a spot. And it's stuff like that I don't like. And I know that they have all this planned out and it's all, you're supposed to suspend disbelief for the sake of the show and yada, yada, blah, blah. But at some point, it's just kind of silly. It's almost like the same thing as when you watch the big explosion at the end of the movie and the heroes are running and they got 5 seconds and it takes like 3 minutes for the whole scene to conclude. And you're like, okay, well, they should either be dead or everything should be incinerated by now. So how did these 5 seconds go by so slow? It's kind of the same thing, in my opinion. So they get there, they're battling and scraping and crawling and hitting and spitting and kicking and crawling and all this sort of stuff. Finally, Ilya gets Mello up on his shoulders, boom, hits him with a DVD on the ring apron, which is just that's rough because that's the hardest part of the ring besides the corners. So that's a rough spot to hit. I know they try to pad it as well as you can, but there's only so much you can do when you're closest to the ring frame. Uh, they get back into the ring. Ilya immediately jumps back out, goes to the top rope, goes to hit something. Mello hits him with a lung blower, counters whatever he was going for with a lung blower, which is basically you jump up, hit two knees, boom, hit the guy in the chest, and it's supposed to take the wind out of you, knock the wind out of you. It's called a lung blower. He's got a gimmick name for it. Now he hops out of the ring, which I thought was kind of funny because they both did the same kind of like hop underneath the bottom rope and up to the top rope. They both did the same exact thing. Absolutely, very little selling to be had on either of these massive moves that just happened. The two or three big moves that just happened, there was little to no selling. Mello goes up top. He hits his finish. I forget what his finish is. 1, 2, 3. Crowd seemed happy. New champ. They seemed happy with the result. I guess we'll see how it goes. Again, can never really tell, but with the crowd noise and everything, but they seemed like they were, for the most part, they seemed happy. But you never know. It could be just like the Pavlovian response of the match is over, the bell rang, the lights are up again. Now we all know we got to go out there and cheer and make it look like we're having a good time, even though we're probably bored to tears for the most part. So yeah, it was basically Hayes seemed mildly over. The crowd didn't seem to really give a crap about a lot of it, and I think that was due to the poor psychology. And two guys beat the crap out of each other. And in some respects, I feel for them because it's like, man, you go out there and you do stuff like that, and you think you're doing good work, and then the crowd, it's like crickets, and it's a bit demoralizing at times. But again, these guys all come from the indies, so they're probably used to it in some form or fashion. So then I watched. There was another match I watched. I won't talk about it too much, but it was kind of funny. They had Mike Mizanin, The Miz, and a guy named Joe Hendry. Miz has been around forever. He former reality star, broke into the business in California in Ultimate Pro Wrestling, Rick Bassman's company. That's where John Cena came from as well. A bunch of guys. They used to have a very good working relationship with UPW. A lot of guys made it was a direct pipeline to WWE back in the day in the early 2000s. So that's where he came from. Had a long road to become the veteran that he is today. He was not liked when he started, but anyhow, that's neither here nor there. Joe Henry's this new guy. He's kind of like he is the perfect type of wrestler for the TikTok generation, for the YouTube short generation, the meme generation. A lot of people gravitate towards. He does like the singer pro wrestler gimmick. Not quite like he's like a honky tonk man, but a folk singer. And he's got this song that everybody it's kind of catchy a little bit, catchy like the HIV, and not quite as deadly, but nonetheless. So they have a match. Not to get you can go look them up if you want. And it was a gimmick match. It was a Miracle on 34th Street fight, is what they called it, and all sorts of Christmas gimmicks all over. Joe Henry's got the whole Sunshine Band on the outside. He's got like three people on the outside with him. But overall, the match was what it was. Bunch of gimmicks. One of the guys was one of the more popular wrestlers on the company was dressed as the Easter Bunny because, of course, it was Christmas, so he had to be the Easter Bunny because he's kind of crazy. That's at least that's a gimmick. And there was one spot, but there's a spot early in the match where they're on the outside, they're brawling, and Miz takes a hip toss into a Christmas tree, and he's just laying there, and I can just tell that I said that didn't look like that felt good. And he probably, what I was thinking is he probably meant to take the hip toss a little bit closer into the tree and a little bit higher up and land in the bristles as opposed to where he landed, which was the table. It was the legs of the Christmas tree. Everybody who's seen a Christmas tree knows what those look like. And I was like, gosh, damn, he's probably hurting from that one. And sure enough, I looked later in the match and he had a big, like, he had a big old cut, bruise gimmick going on his, I think it was his right hip or his right butt cheek. So he definitely he or no, it was his left one because he landed pretty good on that spot, and so he was definitely feeling that one. But whichever one, left or right, I can't quite remember. But either way, he landed real hard on the leg on his hip, and he was definitely feeling that one. But the next match I watched was an NXT match, and this one had a little bit of controversy because they had an unplanned finish. Basically, what happened was it was a women's title match in NXT, their developmental brand. They had a couple of ladies. One's named Blake Monroe. She was wrestling in AEW, and she's cool. She's got really good poise. She got some charisma to her. Really projects a mean streak. I saw that in AEW. I saw some clips of her where she bloodied up one of the wrestlers, and she was really reveling in it. Smearing the blood all over her and everything. So definitely has that edge to her that makes you stand out from just being another pretty face on the roster. And she worked with a young lady named Thea Hale. And as long as she's been in the company, I've been a big fan of hers, big advocate of hers. I think that she's great. She's If she can stay injury free and she keeps learning and growing, then she's got a great future ahead of her. She's young, very pretty, sexy, I would say. Little bit too young for. She's probably like 20 or something like that, but very athletic, great timing, even a little edge to her. You can tell she's kind of got a little rocker vibe to her with her ring gear and her choice. She got like chains and the robe that she has like little spikes and studs and chains and stuff like that. So she's definitely a little bit into the rocker theme. So you gotta have a little bit of respect for that. But very good instincts, very good fundamentals, great timing in the ring. I saw her, she did this kick into a moonsault combo that was beautiful. Uh, at one point, Monroe powdered to the outside, and she immediately follows up with a suicide dive, which is just good stuff. So it was a fun match. I was enjoying it. It seemed like it was really starting to get cooking. And then what happened is Hale was starting a bit of a comeback, and she goes. What she does a springboard no look senton. A senton is basically a backsplash, as opposed to you just a splash. You land front side down on the person. A backsplash is what it would you go backwards. We called a fat boy senton, but she did a no look fat boy senton, just bound off the ropes and went backwards, and she creamed this Monroe. And I don't know if she knocked the wind out of her. I don't know if because she landed real high on her. So I don't know if it was hitting her shoulder that was the issue, but she covers her. The ref goes down 1, 2, 3. Monroe doesn't kick out. She's the champ. They have to do a title change because you can't break kayfabe at that point. So that was a whole big thing. I would say that it happens. I mean, I've personally I've done it before. I forgot to kick out during a match that I had, and it was my big breakout moment with Prince Iakea at an indie show in front of 10 people. I forgot to kick out of a move because I was, part of my language, but I was fucking up all over the place and blowing spots and botching things, and I was nervous as all hell. And then at one point, he just threw me on the ground, covered me, I think to try to get me to relax a little bit, and I was just laying there and I forgot to kick out, and they had to call the match. So it happens. I mean, you got to kick out. It is what it is. You have to be aware of your ring awareness has to be there enough that to kick out when it's not the finish. So I mean, but they this turned into a whole big thing online, and everyone and their mother was talking about it. And it was so bad that the company instituted a new policy where previously all the wrestlers could go home after their matches were done. Now they all have to stay. They all have to stay in case something like this happens again, because you ruin all sorts of TV, all sorts of production, pre-production, all sorts of plans just go right out the window if you do stuff like this, if stuff like this happens. So now they all got to stay because somebody didn't kick out. And some people are putting heat on the ref. The ref's job is to count one, two, three. I know they have certain little procedures that they do, little protocols that they have in place to try to give people a little bit more time, try to milk the count a little bit. But at the same time, the ref can only do so much. You know, there's only one, two, and so many times you can go like, oh, before it looks fake. And that's the worst thing you can do in the business is to have it look fake. I mean, that's always the thing that's the thing that kills it is that everybody knows pro wrestling is what it is. We're not a bunch of retards. It is what it is. It's entertainment. Uh, but at the same time, you have to try to make it look as realistic as possible. You have to be able to suspend the disbelief long enough for people to enjoy themselves and to want to come back the next time. That's the basic premise of pro wrestling. So that was two matches and I'm back. So now let's get into JCW. Like I say, people seem to enjoy my breakdowns and analysis of JCW. So I'm going to continue. This was episode 63. I want to say this was like the fourth or the fifth episode that Russo's been involved with. And overall, I'm going to be honest with you. This one was a dud. This one was really bad. I would dare say it exposed a lot of people as far as like what I was saying last time is that I was kind of hoping to see more out of certain people. And I really feel like it was a lot of more of the same type of stuff. I don't know if this was some sort of throwaway episode that they did because it was Christmas time, but it did not, it didn't work. It was a dud. I mean, it really was. So basically, the two main things, and I always operate under the premise that Russo is a writer. He's not a he doesn't in his mind he doesn't write for pro wrestling. He writes for television. So you have to operate under the premise of that. Look at everything through the lens of that's what he does. So his two main storylines right now that he was trying to advance were the finding a showrunner now that he is in charge of the company and he has booted out the owner from the company. He's engaged in a hostile takeover of Juggalo Championship Wrestling. So now his goal, his mission is to find a showrunner, somebody to run the show, because he doesn't consider he thinks calling somebody a booker is too pro wrestling. Uh, it's too pro wrestlingy. I know that's not a word, but it is now. So he calls it, since it's television, they're a showrunner. So they do a whole match on the last week's show. This guy wrestles this Kerry Morton, Ricky Morton's son, versus the guy Matt Cross. They wrestle. The winner is both are representing Russo and Violent J. Morton with Russo, Matt Cross with Violent J. Whoever wins the match, their person gets to decide who the showrunner is. So Matt Cross, who's a longtime JCW member, he pulls a swerve, lets the guy pin him, blah blah blah. So they do this whole thing where it's a post match thing that it's from the week before, so they're showing it now. So it's from last week. They do this whole thing where Russo comes out with Vito. Uh, Tells the Kerry Morton dude that he's not going to be showrunner. He starts getting all pissy, but then he promises him a title match, which is set up for the current episode that you're watching. It's I forget what title is, but it's with him with the one guy Ninja Mac who uh, still not sold on. And then they go into the whole segment where Russo starts talking about how he's found his showrunner and he brings out Vampiro. I don't know how many are familiar with Vampiro, but he's been a longtime affiliate of ICP and Juggalo Championship Wrestling. Uh, Very well known, world renowned, traveled pro wrestler. Made his bones in Mexico. He's a Canadian wrestler, but he went down to Mexico, made a name for himself, both on the lucha libre circuit, but also he wound up on a soap opera, I believe, on one of the telenovelas down there. He had a band at one point, but he's very much into punk rock and stuff like that. He's been all over outside of WWE. He's been with pretty much every major company. I think other than ECW back in the day. So they announce him as the showrunner, and then he makes a couple of announcements. He brings back this guy, Madman Pondo. He brings back this other female wrestler named Danny Moe, her name is. And then they do a backstage segment where the one wrestler, Alice Crowley, who I said I'd like to hear and see more of her personality. They did this whole weird segment with her and Vince Russo where she's claiming he's sexist because Vampiro was named, and they're going back and forth, and she's accusing him of harassment and all this. It was a very weird segment because there was no indication of any of this at any point in time through any of the shows that I remember watching. I mean, I didn't have a fever dream and forget all this, so I didn't quite understand where they were going with that. I mean, there was just it just didn't make sense. It came across like a book where chapters were missing. Like, how did this come about? Where did this all come from? And then there was even a weird moment where the camera is panning throughout the back area because they're in a room and then there's a room adjacent to it. And you see somebody turn off a gosh damn light. And it's like, will you people just can you try to not look low rent? Can you just do that? You're trying to be a bigger entity than you actually are, and you're doing crap like this. You're just turning lights off, and like it was just stupid, and it didn't make like the whole thing didn't make any sense. I've actually seen. I went back and I watched some stuff, and I saw her. She's cut promos before that are good. They're intense. They got fire to them. This one was a dud. I mean, she just looked like a rank amateur, and it's not like I was the best talker in the business, but at the same time, I would say that I felt like she needs more work on the mic, maybe a little bit more practice staring at herself in a mirror talking, trying to develop this because it was just, there was no fire to it. There was no passion. It was almost like she was just given a script and told to read this stuff. And that's not what pro wrestling needs. We don't need more scripts. You need people to, it needs to be organic. It needs to be mm, improv. It needs to come from the heart in some manner. Everything that makes sense that people feel when you're the way that wrestlers, in my opinion, at least, I could, people could disagree with me. The way you connect with an audience is you have to believe it. And a lot of times, everything should be an extension of your personality. There should be something there that you can relate that'll resonate with the audience, and that's kind of that to me is how you get over. It's again, I never made a dime in the business. I mean, I've probably made a few dimes, but nothing substantial. I certainly didn't make enough money to retire on, and I've never been anywhere, never really done much of anything outside of a few cool moments here and there. But that's just my opinion. But I mean, I did do it professionally. I just did it professionally on the indie level. So then the other storyline that they were advancing was Big Vito and his battles with cocaine. Cocaine, the wrestler, not the narcotic. So again, this followed a theme of, well, I guess I obviously nobody, if anybody with the company watched this, they certainly didn't give a crap about what I was thinking. But I think most of this stuff was in the can anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So they've been doing this whole thing where Vito's going to get cocaine to have a had a I had a stupid trying to get a drug test from cocaine, trying to get a positive drug test from cocaine. Vito's trying to do. So he finally gets him into the bathroom, and he's literally peeing into a Dixie cup. And this is toward the tail end of the show. They had a whole little other thing going on, and then at one point, excuse me, one of the bathroom stalls opens up and it's one of the zombies. And they've been doing this whole thing. I really don't know what the story is because I tried to look to see where the continuity was with the storyline. And this was another problem that I noticed, exposing nature of this episode was the continuity of the show, which the announcers also pointed out during one of the later matches. Don't really know what the relationship is between the zombies and Vito, other than he's scared of them and they're chasing him around. They stole his hat, so the one zombie gives him his hat back, and he realizes who it is, and he jumps and he pours the pee all over his face, all over his mouth, and then he disappears into the zombie backs him into the toilet stall, and they disappear and fade to black. Episode's over. So I mean, Vito's great. He does a great job at everything. I would have thought it would have been a better gag if he started doing spit takes after he poured the pee all over him, realizing that he just poured pee all over his face. But it is what it is. So I think probably, and this, like I said, the announcers brought this up with the continuity issues. So they did this whole thing where Russo cut this whole big promo about wrestlers don't make good bookers. They think like wrestlers. So what does he do? He hires two wrestlers to be his showrunners, bookers. So, and just the fact that they pointed that out, it's like, are you taking the piss out of this? Is this supposed to be some sort of meta gag where it's going like it's too like too many levels of separation from I don't know. I don't know if they thought that this was like I, I don't know what they were thinking here. It didn't make a lot of sense, but it just that was one of those things I thought was odd. It's like, wow, you really mentioned now that once you said that, now it's like, oh, okay, that doesn't this doesn't make any sense. And then there was this whole thing where when they were announcing Vampiro, it was like, oh, controversy creates chaos. And it was like chaos creates controversy. No, it was controversy creates chaos because Eric Bischoff wrote a book called Controversy Creates Cash. But controversy creates chaos doesn't make a lot of sense. If anything, chaos would create controversy. So I don't know if this was some sort of foreshadowing to bringing Bischoff in. It's anybody's guess at this point. That would be interesting, but beyond that, that's all I could say about the actual storyline stuff. It was the lots of continuity errors, and for somebody who's a writer who proclaims himself a great television writer, it didn't make a lot of sense. And I guess you can have your opinions on whether or not that's par for the course, but that was just my opinion on that. And then as far as the matches, I mean, first off, we got a return of the U-Haul ramp, so I guess they must have been in a smaller building. But they had the two teams I wanted to see more of: the Brothers of Funstruction, the Clowns, the tag champs, versus they're called Bustin' the Brain. It's Jordan Oliver and Alex Price. This match fell flat for me. It was just it was sloppy. There wasn't a lot of psychology. There was one point where the clowns did a Hardy Boy special where the one vaults off the other onto the opponent in the corner, and they missed by a country mile. I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. Um, Oliver and Price still have good tag chemistry, but there was just lots of goofy stuff going on. They brought a rubber chicken into the ring. One of them put a Hulk fist on and hit the guy, and the guy Price did a over exaggerated backflip, taking the bump on it. Just a lot of weird, goofy stuff like that. But overall, I would like to see more of everybody. But there was just I don't know. It could have just been an off night, but the match itself wasn't very good. They had a three-way between another guy I wanted to see more of, Shane Mercer, and it was him, Mecha Wolf, and James Storm. It was just another match. I mean, just another way to get people on the program. Didn't really advance anything with Shane Mercer. The only thing that was really notable about the match was the fact that how many times can you say whoop whoop during a match? Because Mecha Wolf probably said whoop whoop about 5 or 6 times during the match. And it was like, all right, we got it. You're a juggalo. It was like, all right, enough already. Um, then they had a women's match, and they had that returning Danny Moe, and this one didn't make a dime's worth of sense either. It was what made zero sense about it to me was the fact that you had this Alice Crowley, you just make her your booker, your of the female division, and she is supposed to be a face character. She's supposed to be a a good girl character. She's supposed to be one of the ones that the crowd's rooting for behind, and she immediately becomes drunk with power. So it's like, okay, we're turning her now that she immediately gets, as soon as she gets authority, she becomes hard to deal with and becomes a nightmare. That's what we're going with here. So they bring back this Danny Moe, who's supposed to be popular. She's got the Hatchet Man on her gear, so she's obviously supposed to be a fan favorite. And they do this whole thing where they have her go from working a singles match to now she's in a four-way with three other women, and they're all beating the tar out of her. And the finish is one of them hit what was a beautiful, beautiful pile driver. Her name was Jocelyn Navarro. She had a just a it was brilliant. I mean, just a great Paul Orndorff, Jerry Lawler would have been proud of this pile driver. She did an excellent job on that one. And then the one of the girls throws her out of the ring, which again to me, technically speaking, didn't make a lot of sense because she was much larger than the other girl. So it would have made more sense if after she did the pile driver, she gets up and she's kind of getting ready to do the pin, and then maybe she hits her boom with the move. She falls out of the ring, then she goes for the cover. That would have made a little bit more sense. And actually, going back to the clown match with Price and Oliver, I was thinking because those guys were a little bit smaller, a little bit more undersized than the clowns, it would have made more sense if like they were working the leg or something like that, maybe isolating one of the guys, neutralizing them that way because they were a little bit smaller and shorter than them. But again, it's probably a drawback to having these short TV type matches where there's not a lot of time to tell a story. So in some respects, it gets kind of hard, but at the same time, when you're supposed to be having like these big fight feels and you're trying to do it in like 3, 4 minutes, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It doesn't translate. So that was that. And then they had the Ninja Mac versus Kerry Morton match, title match. Again, still not sold on Ninja Mac. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of the work. Uh, Morton gets heat, but I don't. It's kind of cheap heat most of the time. It's lots of him swearing and dropping f bombs and making fellatio references and gyrating his hips and his pelvis at the crowd and in his opponent's face. And I don't know if he's going for the ambiguously gay gimmick or what he's doing, and that's supposed to get him heat with the juggalos because that's not the type of crowd that would be into that sort of thing. But there's way too much of that. And then I mean he was getting heat in the sense where people were throwing trash at him, but I think after one or two, it just turned into a case where people could just be antisocial and start throwing trash at somebody, so they all just started doing that. So I don't know if it was necessarily a product of his ability to get heat or it was just a product of this is the type of crowd that would throw trash at people. So I couldn't really tell you there, but by and large it was a lot of there was a lot of nothing. Ninja Mac retained the title. Don't know where they go with Kerry Morton from here because he seemed to be an integral part of the last episode, and now he's kind of like, okay, where do they go with him? What does he do next? Then they had a main event match. It was Willie Mack and Too Tough Tony versus Jasmine St. Clair's Monster Corporation or something, the Mr. Happy Guy in Congo Kong. Uh, After seeing this so much, I'm really getting tired of seeing these guys all the time. It's just not. It doesn't work for me, brother. It's not working for me. It was just a garbage match. Lots of plunder and brawling. The finish was the one. Too Tough Tony hit what he called the meteor, which is basically poured Bacardi all over his hand, set his hand on fire, and punched the guy, and that was the finish. Then they introduce another guy named Beastman. He comes down. He's a big, like 6'3", 6'4" dude dressed like a caveman, like 400 pounds. Hits the guys with a bone that he carries to the ring. They all the big. I'm just being a bit hyperbolic, but all the fat guys now squash their smaller opponents who are not small by any stretch of the imagination, and that was pretty much. Then they led into the veto segment and they went off the air. So that was that. That was JCW. I would say that there was lots of continuity problems. To me, it was very exposing as far as some of the talent. Like either they, it was kind of a dud for me. So that's what I thought of it. That's my opinion. Yeah. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Everybody, let me know what you think. Again, another long one. I might not do this as a two-parter because it didn't take me too long to do the JCW breakdown. But yeah, let me know what you think. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Everybody take it easy. It's getting close to time for me to finish this up and then yeah, man, go get my pump on and get my legs done. Yeah, so as always, this is Dan Moonshine from Moonshine Talking. Thanking you for joining me and saying, as always, stay sick, stay heavy, stay brutal. Always tuck a chin upon impact. Don't forget to breathe. Have a good one. Everybody, if you are available tonight, I don't know what time it is, but go check out Barry from that Goat Metal show. Go check out his channel. He's going to have an end of year recap with my boy Anthony from Metal Miners and Melanie Loves Death Metal. Melanie from the Melanie Loves Death Metal channel. It's going to be, I believe it's going to be Tone and Rich, the silent producer, and Barry, and they're all going to be discussing their favorite releases of the year. Always very cool to see people's opinions and where everybody's tastes vary. So yeah, man, if you got time and you got nothing better to do, then go check it out. It should be fun. I'm going to try to hit it up and go pop in the chat as much as I can. And yeah, so that's what I got for you, everybody. Once again, take it easy. Thank you for joining me. If I don't see you before then, have a happy new year. Stay safe out there. Hopefully, everybody has a good start to the new year. Hopefully, it brings in good fortune and blessings and good tidings and all that sort of good stuff. Hopefully, is a good year for everybody, and nobody has any obstacles or anything like that to get in their way as the year goes on. All right, I've babbled on long enough. Everyone, take it easy, and I will see you on the next one. Later.